Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 36. Omniscient Sunfish. Part 1. After a while, we moved towards the entrance of the hidden dungeon on the first underground floor. I walked behind Li Jihai, Li Gilyang and Jung Hee-won while looking at my smartphone. In the midst of the splitting headache, Yu Jonghyuk came to his senses. Give up on this life. This was the end of Yu Jonghyuk's 8th life. It couldn't be. This hadn't happened yet. Shit, why was this guy doing this on only the 3rd life? If he moved carefully like his 2nd life, he would have passed through the mid to late scenarios. I raised my eyes to see Jung Hee-won looking at me. Doc JSSI, what are you looking at? Ah, the calendar. This situation has made me lose my sense of the date. I actually thought it might be more interesting to look at the calendar. Sometimes I wondered how I finished reading this novel. Jung Hee-won looked at me suspiciously before turning her head towards Li Jihai. Then, did you say your name was Jihai? Do you also use a sword? Yes. I like the sword. Right? The sword is the best. It has a good taste. Uni also knows the taste? Jung Hee-won smiled as she watched Li Jihai's sword. It was a luxurious sword that obviously flowed smoothly. Maybe it was given by Yu Jonghyuk. Your sword looks good. Ah, master gave it to me. Uni. My one. I like mine as well. Jung Hee-won looked down at the Graalhorn blade and then sneaked a peek at the sword on the other person's waist. I didn't do anything wrong, but I couldn't help feeling sorry. I had no choice but to hang something on Li Jihai. Hey, why are you talking to Hee-won SSI but ignoring me? I'm a bit weak to older females. Li Jihai responded with a quivering voice and Jung Hee-won gave her a headlock, as if Li Jihai was cute. There seemed to be a connection between the demon slayers. Li Jihai barely escaped from the headlock and asked. By the way, why are you rescuing Master? We are companions. Don't talk nonsense. He is a useful guy. You sound like Master. The constellation Secretive Plotter is wondering about your heart. Come to think of it, it wasn't just Li Jihai but the constellations as well who must be wondering about my actions. He was a guy who would kill me if he got a chance. It was strange that I would run to save him. The constellation Demon-like Judge of Fire likes your desire to rehabilitate a fallen friend. 100 coins have been sponsored. This one misunderstood me. But the demon-like Judge of Fire, unlike the expectations of the Archangel Uriel, I had a deeply personal reason for saving Yu Jonghyuk. It was to prevent him from regressing after his death. Regression after death. It sounded good. A regression stigma that triggered every time you died. The protagonist had a fraudulent ability. The problem was that this ability invoked complicated thoughts in the surrounding cast. By the way, what happens to the world after you return? A supporting actor had asked this of Yu Jonghyuk when Yu Jonghyuk's number of lives had broken into the double digits. I forgot his name, but Yu Jonghyuk's answer from that time was clear. I also don't know. I always choose a world where more people can live. It was plausible, but in fact, Yu Jonghyuk didn't know about the world he abandoned. In Face, there was no definite theory about what happened to the world and ways of survival. Science, magic, whatever. This was why I was anxious. What happened to the world after the regressor disappeared? Would it reset with the regression? Or would a parallel universe branch off? The latter would be fortunate, but if it was the former. Hyung? Ah, yes? Li Gilyang, who was holding the hem of my clothes, looked up at me with anxious eyes. I think we're here? You are approaching the outside region. Be careful not to leave the scenario area. This message popped up. It didn't matter. Chunmuro's hidden dungeon was treated as an inside area. We turned the corner and exit one appeared. A dungeon entrance with an ominous shade greeted us. You have found a hidden dungeon. This dungeon has already been discovered by someone. You can't get the first discovery achievement. A new hidden scenario has arrived. Plus. Hidden scenario, theater dungeon, category, hidden. Difficulty, A. Clear conditions, defeat the master of theater dungeon. Time limit, none. Compensation, 4,000 coins, failure. Plus. The surprised Lee Jai-hai hesitated and stepped back. What is this? Theater dungeon? Lee Gil-young looked startled. Well, this must be the first time they encountered a hidden scenario. Yong Hee-won also spoke. A movie theater as a dungeon, it sounds romantic. Romantic. This was only because she didn't know how scary the movie theater could be. We entered the theater. The familiar lobby of the multiplex welcomed us. You have entered theater dungeon. We were tense as we entered the bleak dungeon. It was a multiplex consisting of 9 floors, from B1 to the 8th floor. Hyung, the posters are torn. Who would do that? I'm not sure. I said this, but I actually knew the truth. The core of this theater dungeon were the posters on the wall. Perhaps Yu Jong-hyuk defeated every poster as he went upstairs. His intentions were to sweep up all the rewards. Except for the torn posters, nothing strange was found on B1. There were no items and no monsters. The only exception was the smashed elevator in one corner with a distorted door. Lee Jai-hai asked. Isn't this a dungeon? Why isn't there anything? Something will appear. Do you know something? A little. How? Something is fishy about a juicy. Is this your second life? That was her master. But he had lived 3 times. Then Yong Hee-won said, it is due to the sponsor behind Dokjes SI. Really? I ignored the 2 women and tried to move to the ground floor when I was caught by Lee Gil-young. The cockroach on his head was moving wildly. Lee Jai-hai drew her sword at almost the same moment I covered her mouth with a hand. Shoo, there is somebody else besides us. I breathed out while small sounds started to be heard. Just upstairs. Then, the lobby? I first thought it was Yu Jong-hyuk, but it wasn't Yu Jong-hyuk's voice. Are you sure? Here, there are a bunch of things. Yes. I bought the information with 1,000 coins. The profits? Yes. They are disgusting, but the information is obvious. I heard the sound of people talking. We went up the escalator and approached them. It seemed that 4 people were gathered in the lobby on the 1st floor. Lee Jai-hai whispered, who are they? I never once saw their faces in Chunmuro. Maybe they came from the ground side entrance. Ground side? Isn't that filled with poisonous fog? Furthermore, the scenario. Different stations have different scenarios at different speeds. There are those who have finished the scenario faster than our station. If there is a weak poisoning, they can eat the meat from the underground species. I said this, but I was confused. Profits? There was no information about such people in Yu Jong-hyuk's life. At this point, Yu Jong-hyuk and I should be the only ones who knew about the hidden dungeon. What caused the variables? Needless to say, I needed to find out. Then let's go inside. A blue spotlight was floating above the men talking. A bright light surrounded them and then they disappeared. What happened to them? Yong Hee-won asked me, but I didn't answer. Instead, I was searching the posters on the wall. This was torn, that as well. By the time I reached the end of the wall, only one wasn't torn. I read the words written on the poster. Steven Spielberg, Samuel L. Jackson, Jeff Goldblum. That bastard Yu Jong-hyuk, he left this one alone? as expected from the third regression. At that moment, the light came on again. This time, the spotlight was aimed on us. The surprised Lee Jai-hai and Lee Gil-young stepped back, but there was no way to avoid it. The word Ray suited it. I asked Jung Hee-won, Hee-won SSI likes movies? Of course. Do you usually like it? You might hate it after this. What do you? You have been hit by a projection light. The screening will begin. The surrounding landscape started to slowly change. It wasn't a simple illusion, so fourth wall wasn't activated as before. The old linoleum floor became covered with green bushes, while the reception desk and popcorn stand turned into a lush rainforest. The ceiling turned into a blue sky with no clouds and no end in sight. Lee Ji-hai muttered in a small voice. Where the hell is this place? Lee Ji-hai shouted and hacked at the surrounding trees and bushes, but nothing changed. Lee Gil-young started looking for insects with a calm expression. I tried to touch the nearby trees. It had a hard and moist texture. It was a real rainforest from the Mesozoic era. This was a different realism from the Spectre's welcome prison. This was the power of the theater master on the dungeon's 8th floor. It is a movie. Really ridiculous things are happening. A novel had become reality. There was no law that a movie couldn't become reality as well. Jung Hee-won was a fast adapter and quickly understood. A juicy, what movie is this? You'll know soon. Can't you just let me know? Wait a minute, what is this kid doing? At this moment, the shrubbery moved and something jumped out in front of Lee Gil-young. An insect that resembled a giant praying mantis. The size was approximately 40 centimeters. Lee Ji-hai was terrified and cried out. Hey kid! Back away! However, Lee Gil-young responded calmly to the fuss. It isn't a praying mantis. It is a Titanoptera from the Triassic period. What? Lee Gil-young stretched out his hand to the Titano. The insect didn't refuse the touch, and after a moment, Lee Gil-young and the insect's body was wrapped in a blue light. Lee Ji-hai watched with a stupid expression. This, what? Fabre. It really was good that I brought Lee Gil-young. This guy's ability might allow us to pass through the gateway more easily. The giant praying mantis moved its big mouth and Lee Gil-young nodded. I didn't know what it involved, but they were having a conversation. After a while, Lee Gil-young paled as he talked to the praying mantis. What was it? Lee Gil-young hurriedly turned to me. Hyung. As he spoke, the sound of the earth shaking was heard. It seemed that something was coming at a tremendous speed, smashing the huge palm trees. Coo! The muzzle of the giant reptile that appeared through the rainforest was covered with reddish blood. Some bloody men were running in front of it. It was the men who entered before us. Quackak! Save me! Lee Ji-hai stepped back and spoke to Jung Hee-won. I know what movie this is. Yes, me too. A body that was over 12 meters tall and hard skin. Fierce muscles dominated the entire body. The strongest predator of the Mesozoic era was in front of us. At first glance, it was similar to a grade 7 monster. The difficulty level was atrocious, considering this was the first floor of the dungeon. But my heart just thumped. The harder the hidden dungeon, the better the reward. I pulled out a blade and said, "Get ready to fight." Maybe Yu Jong-hyuk skipped only this movie because of the contents. The main reward of Theater Dungeon was related to the movie contents. Yu Jong-hyuk probably thought there weren't any worthy rewards in a movie where dinosaurs appeared. But he didn't know. In this movie, a really important reward was hidden. Are you serious? We are going to fight that? We need to beat it to make an exit. The exit? It is a long movie. Have you forgotten? A T-Rex was approaching quickly. The island's central laboratory was seen behind it. And an escape helicopter was on the rooftop of the laboratory. This was a movie. A movie that the master of Theater Dungeon made into reality. Therefore, there was only one way to escape from here. Let's make a great ending. Chapter 37. Omniscient Sunfish. Part 2. The moment the yellow eyes looked at us, a deafening roar echoed in our ears. Coo! The 7th grade Tyrannosaurus Rex has recognized you. The Tyrannosaurus Rex has triggered the Fear the Predator skill. The exclusive skill 4th wall has blocked the effect of the Fear the Predator skill. My mind was calm thanks to 4th wall, but I could stop the chills that occurred. This was the fear towards a predator. Everyone, get out of the way. The petrified Young Hee-won and Lee Jae-hai regained their spirits. I fell back with Lee Gil-young beside me. Qua 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 qua. A long tail flew through the forest in front of us. Quack. The men who were running fell on the backs and coughed up blood. Fortunately, Young Hee-won and Lee Jae-hai were away from the danger zone. I shouted to Lee Gil-young lying down next to me. Gil-young fall back, while Hee-won SSI and Jae-hai SSI scattered to the left and right. Then a message popped up. The character, Lee Gil-young, has activated the Dinosaur Book skill. Huh? Tyrannosaurus are agile compared to their size, but they are vulnerable due to their narrow field of view. What? I saw it in a book when I was a child. When you were a child? Younger than I am now. I stared blankly at Lee Gil-young. This wasn't the time to tackle it. Coo! The exclusive skill White Pure Star Energy has been activated. I started waving the iridescent blade to attract the attention of the T-Rex. Lee Jae-hai and Young Hee-won weren't tankers. I didn't even need to mention Lee Gil-young. Therefore, I was the only one who could take the risk here. While I draw its attention, attack its rear. I hadn't finished talking when I saw Lee Jae-hai and Young Hee-won already at the T-Rex's rear. They noticed quickly. Coo! I barely avoided the incoming teeth and the stomping legs. Before I could wield Unbroken Faith, its tail passed over my head. An electrifying thrill swept over my body. I wouldn't die because my stamina was over level 20, but it was dizzying. Maybe I had been lucky until now. I might be the sunfish rather than you, Jong-hyuk. Sukak. Supak. Meanwhile, Young Hee-won and Lee Jae-hai was steadily dealing damage from the rear. It was a combination of sword training and kendo. Noticeable sword wounds were being dealt to the T-Rex's big legs. If this continued, it might take some time, but the T-Rex would be defeated. Hyung. I'll draw its attention. The boy didn't listen to me about staying in the rear. No, Gil-young you. I can do it. All of a sudden, Lee Gil-young came forward and started to make an unknown signal. I wanted to say something. Then a huge praying mantis came from somewhere, stabbed the T-Rex's eyes, and fled. It was the Titano that Lee Gil-young had been talking to before. Coo! The T-Rex's eyes moved confusedly as it followed the praying mantis that disturbed its vision. Lee Gil-young used dazzling hand movements to control the praying mantis. I looked at Lee Gil-young with a fresh mindset. Wasn't this guy actually a hugely fraudulent character? No wonder why Yoo Jong-hyuk coveted him. Kawoo. Thanks to Lee Gil-young's success, the battlefield quickly became advantageous. The T-Rex's movements became duller while a red light shone in Young Hee-won and Lee Jae-hai's eyes. Demon Slayer. It made them vulnerable to mental attacks, but it was a good skill that made them stronger when they were excited. The sight of the two women's eyes burning as they watched the rainforest was truly spectacular. It was a pity that I had lost Lee Jae-hai to Yoo Jong-hyuk. However, Young Hee-won also had overwhelming growth potential. Judge of Destruction was a good attribute, and she didn't have a sponsor yet. It felt like the T-Rex's stamina had decreased considerably. It was time to deal the final blow. Blade of Faith is activated. I started to focus my remaining magic power. I didn't have a sponsor, nor was I as fast as Jim Hee-won or Lee Jae-hai. But that didn't mean my attack power was weak. I had a fraudulent system that overcame all of this. Cool. Ether Blade. The special option of Unbroken Faith is activated. The ether property is converted to fire. An enormous amount of magic power was sucked in and my physical fatigue became extreme. But I didn't mind because there was a way to supplement it later. The blade increased by 1 meter and was surrounded by flames. I ran to the rear of the Tyrannosaurus. Everybody out of the way. The moment that the Tyrannosaurus hesitated and its movements slowed, I climbed its tail. I almost fell over a few times because I didn't have this sense of balance, but I somehow held on by stabbing the blade into the epidermis. Coo! The T-Rex poured out blood and its body rolled across the ground. I rammed the blade in wherever I could. Flames poured into the wounds caused by the blade. The yellow eyes of the T-Rex stared at me as it gasped painfully, before finally dying. You have succeeded in being the first to hunt the 7th grade species, Tyrannosaurus rex. You have obtained 1,000 coins as compensation. Ah, we really got it. I knew we could do it. Young Hee-won breathed heavily as she spoke with a proud expression on her face. She could be proud because the T-Rex was top-ranked among the 7th grade monsters. Lee Jae-hai belatedly rushed towards me. I had it. What? It would have taken a long time if you continued hitting it like that. I wiped off my sword while speaking. Young Hee-won asked. But was a Tyrannosaurus killed in this movie? No, but isn't this more fun? Huh? The genre is fantasy, action, and adventure. This should be enough. At this moment, a system message flashed in my head. The theater owner is satisfied with the changed ending of the movie. Young Hee-won screamed like it was absurd. Eek? Yes. The strategy of Theater Dungeon wasn't to see the real ending. If so, Yoo Jong-hyuk wouldn't have been able to beat this dungeon. It was to create the desired ending for the theater master at the core of this dungeon. Please note that the theater owner was an extreme psychopath. Do you understand now? We just need to smash it. In other words, if we removed all the obstacles to the ending, the movie would end naturally. Now you can move to the next floor. Go to the helipad on top of the research laboratory. We will move in a little while. We have to get some rewards. I started exploring the area around the T-Red. Soon after, I found one of the guys who entered before us. The rest were eaten or mutilated by the T-Rex. Hey, wake up. Woo. Blood was constantly flowing from the man. The wounds were from the T-Rex's claws. The bones were revealing, making it obvious that this person couldn't recover. Breathe slowly. See cough. Alive. I fed the man drinking water I had brought in. The man drank some water before coughing up blood again. I was forced to urgently ask him questions. How did you come here? Prophet. Who are the prophets? The man's breathing was getting rougher. Our revelation, received. Revelation? I want to, live. Blood burst out from the man's mouth. He finally died. Young Hee-won and the others came up behind me. That person. I shook my head and looked down at the fallen man. Revelation. What funny bullshit. As far as I knew, only Anna Croft had the ability of future sight in ways of survival. Then there was only one answer. There was someone else besides me. But they didn't know as much as I did. The proof was that they didn't dare come here in person to test out the information. Doc JSSI? Take a break. We covered the man's body with a large lead and gathered near the dead T-Rex. W had to hurry to pursue Yoo Jong-hyuk. But if we didn't get enough rest, the party would be wiped out before we met him. I searched the T-Rex's body. I looked at the head and heart, but unfortunately, I couldn't find any monster cores. That didn't mean there was no income. Young Hee-won drooled as she watched the T-Rex being cooked over the fire. Can we eat this? We can eat it because it is cooked with magic flames. The unripe parts can be cooked with the magic power stove. We sat side by side around the T-Rex's leg. As we cut the cooked flesh of the T-Rex little by little, steam rose. Lee Gil-young shouted, "Fresh meat!" Lee Ji-hai hurriedly rushed up and grabbed a piece first. The rest of the group, including myself, also picked large pieces of flesh. Meat of this size? It was a luxury that couldn't be dreamed of back when I was an office worker. Lee Ji-hai closed her eyes while enjoying the taste. Then she murmured in an ecstatic voice, "Ah, the best taste in the world, it really was delicious." The fat was properly wrapped around the muscles, making it different from the ground rats. The feeling every time I took a bit. If Yusanga was here, she would have cried. After I consumed the meat, I felt my stamina recovering. The meat of an advanced species had these special effects. However, caution was required in some cases. Young Hee-won sighed. Phew. I ate well. It is really delicious, but I will cry if I eat any more. We had a moderate rest and then headed straight to the laboratory in the center of the island. We encountered several raptors on the way, but they were easy after the T-Rex. There were many flasks and ampoules in the laboratory. There were small incubators containing dinosaur embryos and blood samples collected. There was only one thing missing. My eyes caught a few items as we entered the inner corridor. Stamina enhancing ampoule. Magic power enhancing ampoule. Agility enhancing ampoule, strength enhancing ampoule. As expected, it was here. I started to pack the ampoules. Just like the ichthyosaur's core, these comprehensive stat growth items were available only in the early scenarios. It wasn't just 1 or 2 ampoules. There were close to 20 bottles. If this was the case, my stats would be able to level up explosively. It was in anticipation of this hidden scenario that I saved coins instead of investing them in my stats. These ampoules were only available when the corresponding stat was less than level 30. Juicy, what did you find now? Ah, this ghost-like girl. What? Stamina enhancement ampoule? Lee Ji-hai's eyes shone as she grabbed one ampoule. Are you trying to eat these alone? Eat them all? Of course I will share it. Uni, look at this. Juicy. The other people in the party came closer due to the turmoil. Young Hee-won was shocked when she checked the item information. Oh my god, what are these items? This is a hidden scenario. I spoke with a bit of disgruntlement. Damn, this was a bit difficult. I didn't catch the tea. Rex alone, so taking all the items pricked my conscience. Some constellations are displeased with the situation. Lee Ji-hai looked at the strength enhancement ampoule and opened her mouth. Can you give me the strength enhancement ampoule? I am a bit lacking in strength. The exclusive skill, character list is activated. It was a summary version that only contained the comprehensive stats. Character summary list, name, Lee Ji-hai. Private attribute, Scarred Sword Demon, rare. Exclusive skills, Sword Training LV4, Demon Slaying LV1, Absolute Sense LV2, Ghost Walk LV2. Stigma, Sea Battle LV1, Large Army Command LV1. Overall stats, Stamina LV13, Strength LV17, Agility LV13, Magic Power LV10. This damn girl. Huh? Hee-won Uni, can't I have it? Doc Jesasai was the one who discovered it, so it is his decision. Frankly, it didn't matter if the other party members received them, but giving them to Lee Ji-hai was a bit of a waste. She was part of Yoo Jong-hyuk's group anyway. The constellation demon-like judge of fire expects your fairness. Fairness, yes, let's pick the most unbiased game I knew. I smiled and made a suggestion. How about rock, paper, scissors? Rock, paper, scissors? There will be one winner at the end. Greed filled Lee Jae-hai's face. Okay. Well, I will do what Doc SSI wants. But is it okay? It could be a mistake. Then doesn't that mean he is unlucky? Lee Jae-hai asked. She was excited at the thought of getting a share of the items. Let's start with the strength enhancement ampoule. I put out the strength enhancement ampoule and said to Lee Jae-hai, "You will face me. I'm good at rock, paper, scissors. Will it be okay?" "Ah, is that so?" I smiled at Lee Jae-hai. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint Stage 1 has been activated. The character, Lee Jae-hai, has prepared scissors. Chapter 38. Omniscient Sunfish. Part 3. The constellation secretive plotter is curious about your scam. The constellations have sponsored you 200 coins. The winner of the rock, paper, scissors was decided in an instant. Lee Gil-young's face was slightly flushed while Young Hee-won had a satisfied expression. Lee Jae-hai flopped to the ground with a devastated expression. This is ridiculous. Unfortunately, I couldn't read Lee Gil-young's mind, so 2 ampoules went to him. You don't have to give it to me. Take it. He was cute. I stroked Lee Gil-young's head. In addition, Young Hee-won won 2 stamina enhancement ampoules. Young Hee-won received them with a smile. Thank you. It was tough so far with my stamina. It was only Lee Jae-hai who didn't obtain any ampoules. How can you beat me 18 out of 20 times? Did you cheat? I am originally good at rock, paper, scissors. Are you really going to do this? Can't you give me just one? You have Yoo Jong-hyuk. I ignored Lee Jae-hai's whines and packed the ampoules. Young Hee-won patted the shoulder of the grouchy Lee Jae-hai while staring at Lee Jae-hai's shining sword. Little sister, the world has to be fair. Do-do-do-do. There was the sound of the helicopter's propellers. Lee Gil-young looked at the distant dinosaur island and asked, "Hyung, can't I take it to the next floor?" The big praying mantis was sitting in Lee Gil-young's lap and talking to Lee Gil-young. The praying mantis rubbed its antenna against Lee Gil-young's jaw. Unfortunately, you can't take it. Lee Gil-young hugged the praying mantis with a sad expression. Take care, Titano. Quiet. He had already given it a name. Unfortunately, monsters created in Theater Dungeon couldn't move to another floor. However, items could be taken to other floors. For example, I had the ampoules that increased stats and the item I was now holding. Tyrant T-Rex's DNA ampoule. The golden ampoule was the most decisive reason for choosing this movie. It was an item that increased all stats by 10 for 30 minutes after ingestion. Although it had the disadvantage that it could only be used in Theater Dungeon, it was impossible to break through the last floor of this dungeon without this item. Especially if Yoo Jong-hyuk was in the worst situation as I thought. The praying mantis that Lee Gil-young released flew in the air and the dark sky started to collapse. The first ending credit has been reached. Performers, Kim Dokja, Young Hee-won, Lee Jae-hai, Lee Gil-young. You have obtained 500 coins as compensation. I felt some dizziness, and we appeared on the ground floor again. After we escaped, the movie posted on the wall was torn. It was evidence that we safely cleared it. Lee Jae-hai was complaining. Do you have to pass a few more floors like this? Yoo Jong-hyuk will have broken most of it, so it will be faster than you think. We headed straight to the second floor via the escalator. From the second floor, the remaining space was narrow because it was the full-fledged theater. Young Hee-won asked. There's no change? No matter how long we waited, the environment on the second floor didn't change. The camera wasn't seen and the screening didn't start either. Looking closer, all the posters on the second floor were torn. Lee Jae-hai noticed something. Is it only the movies whose posters are intact? I checked the torn posters one by one. Pacific Rim, directed by Guillermo del Toro, a giant robots riding movie? Too bad. If this had been intact, then I could have gotten the reward of hardened gloves. Inception, directed by Christopher Nolan, it was good that this one was torn. Wow, I wanted to watch this. I saw the poster that Lee Jae-hai was looking at. Do you like superheroes? Yes. It is fortunate. Otherwise you would hate it after this. I see. On the torn poster, a green monster was roaring at us. We went straight up to the third floor. It is the same here. All the posters on the third floor were torn as well. Yoo Jong-hyuk had properly swept through it. It was fortunate since there were a lot of dangerous movies on the third floor. Final Destination, directed by James Wan, that bastard Yoo Jong-hyuk, how did he break this? This was an annihilation movie. We are going up faster than I expected? Unlike Young Hee-won's bright voice, I was nervous every time we climbed a floor. Clearing the theater dungeon required some luck. Some of the posters on each floor weren't covered in ways of survival. Yoo Jong-hyuk didn't clear all movies. There was a system message when we entered the fourth floor. You have entered the fourth floor. The spotlight poured down without giving me time to look at the posters. Young Hee-won gathered both hands together and prayed. Please don't be a ghost movie. I glanced at Young Hee-won and she gave me an excuse. Ghosts can't be killed with a sword. This was the reason. The screening has started. The background changed, and when we opened our eyes, a sea breeze blew on the prow of a ship. This salt was felt in my mouth, and the open horizon spread out before me. I was enraptured by the scenery of the sea. I had been working every day, and it had been a few years since I've traveled anywhere. What is this movie? Next to me, Young Hee-won was wearing a full-length dress. A violin sound was heard from the inside of the cruise ship, and there was the sound of excited people. It was an incredibly romantic atmosphere from a movie. Oh, I know what this movie is. Then Lee Jae-hai's voice was heard. Oh, accelerating all of a sudden. I looked back and saw that Lee Jae-hai was vomiting. Young Hee-won rushed over and patted her back. After vomiting for a long time, Lee Jae-hai said, I get seasick. It is okay, just vomit. I had wondered this since a while ago. Why did the Duke of Loyalty and Warfare choose Lee Jae-hai? No, I read the novel, but I just didn't want to know. But Uni, is this the movie? The boat that sinks. It seems so. Then, perhaps Uni is Kate Winslet? Lee Jae-hai looked at Young Hee-won's dress like she was envious, then she looked at me. Then a juicy is. DiCaprio? You weak. I felt somehow grumpy when I saw her vomiting after saying that. At this time, Lee Gil-young emerged from behind me. Hyung. Lee Gil-young was dressed in formal clothing. This clothing was somewhat familiar. Anyway, everyone was gathered. There is no time. The ship was now sinking. Unfortunately, the solution to this movie didn't appear in ways of survival. How could we beat the Titanic? Was it a fight with the sea? Lee Jae-hai was the first to comment. The ship is sinking anyway. Do we just have to sink with it? That is a little. It was frustrating. It would have been better if the movie had a clear enemy to crush. Let's look for the villain Hyung. This was Lee Gil-young's opinion. I didn't know if there was an obvious villain in this movie, but since I couldn't think of anything else, I decided to follow it. Then let's handle the villain. We started moving. By the way, who was this movie's villain? The last time I watched the Titanic, But I didn't need to worry. The villain came to find us. A man in a clean suit was staring over here. Jack Dawson. Wait, Jack Dawson, the role that DiCaprio played? But the man wasn't looking at me. Me? He was DiCaprio? I sighed as I looked at Lee Gil-young. After a while, we kidnapped a person we thought was the villain of the movie. But the theater master didn't respond. It wasn't enough to kidnap him. I hesitated for a moment before opening my mouth. Then, let's kill him. Lee Ji-hai pulled out her sword and pointed it. It was at a man struggling while his body was tied up. The theater master is a psychopath? Then isn't the answer to kill him quickly? I thought so as well. No, I was sure of it. It was the answer to another movie like this in Ways of Survival. But Jung Hee-won gazed at the man in horror and unexpected said, "But, he looks like a real person." Huh? This is a movie, but he's just like a real person. It was surprising that Jung Hee-won said this when she had been neatly subjugating the weak a few days ago. Then again, Jung Hee-won had said something like this, "I might be a killer, but I don't want to become a monster." Lee Ji-hai asked, "Uni, what are you saying this type of sentimental thing now? You don't want to kill him?" "No, that isn't it. It is good to save people. But if this person doesn't die, we will die. We are definitely alive, but this guy is just a character." Characters. I felt bemused at Lee Ji-hai's words. Jung Hee-won looked at me. "Do you think so? Even if this guy is a real person, he is still a bad guy. Why is killing him bad?" Lee Ji-hai's words might be right. This guy was definitely a villain of the scenario and would do bad things. So it was okay to kill him. Funnily enough, it was the logic that Yu Jong-hyuk often spoke about in Ways of Survival. The moment I opened my mouth, Lee Ji-hai hurriedly drew her sword. "Sai, what is this? Master could be dying right now." The blade descended and pierced the man's chest. Blood poured out. It was incredibly realistic. Then a system message was heard. The theater owner is satisfied with the changed ending of the movie. The stern of the ship will lead to the next floor. Look, I did it properly. Right? Lee Ji-hai shouted triumphantly. The answer obviously wasn't wrong. The theater master acknowledged this, and the constellations would give coins for our actions. We would survive with these coins. It was a way of living that destroyed this world. The second ending credit has been reached. Performers, Kim Dok-ja, Jung Hee-won, Lee Ji-hai, Lee Gil-young. You have obtained 500 coins as compensation. We weren't able to get a reward item from Titanic. Thus, we went straight to the next floor and followed the guidance of the system message. You have entered the 5th floor, the rewards room. Once we climbed the escalator, the rewards room finally showed up. Rewards room? It isn't a scary movie? This is an exhibition hall. It was a place they used to show original movie props. In fact, I knew this, but I once again acted ignorant. Various movie props appeared in glass tubes. Equipment and costumes used by the main characters of various movies, stage accessories. The funny thing was that they were no longer props. Jung Hee-won approached a glass tube and shouted, "Oh my god, look at this! Mikazuki Munikika, replica, a great sword." Jung Hee-won's eyes sparkled as she looked at the glass tube and I nodded. "You've finally obtained a proper sword, Hee-won SSI." Whoa. It was obviously a great sword at first glance. The originally Gralhorn knife wasn't comparable and it wasn't lacking when compared to Lee Ji-hai's blade. Jung Hee-won started to swing the sword in his hand. Isn't this amazing? It is light and moves properly. I had never seen Jung Hee-won like this. The character Jung Hee-won is deeply grateful to you. It was nothing. The main purpose of targeting the theater dungeon was the compensation of the 5th floor. The theater dungeon was a good place to farm for items early on. In particular, Young Hee-won would become stronger with this weapon. The reward items are limited to 2 per person. It wasn't a genuine star relic person, it was a movie prop, but the replica version had characteristics of the original item. A-grade items were close to a scam in the early stages. By the way, Yoo Jong-hyuk had already passed through here. 2 items were already gone. Pick your items. Each one can only obtain 2, so choose carefully. I told Young Hee-won to pick an item Yoo Sang-ga could use, while I found one for Lee Hyun-sung. This one seemed usable. Hercules Shield Replica, a grade shield. Good. It was an item that couldn't be compared with the old Iron Shield. I thought of how Lee Hyun-sung's eyes would shine with loyalty towards me, and already felt warm. Lee Jae-hi, who claimed to be a fan of superheroes, was trying to pull an item from the corner. "Aw, why can't I hold this?" I came closer. This was it. Mjolnir, Replica, a grade blunt weapon. The hammer of the god of lightning, Thor. It would have been an enormous item if it was a genuine star relic. Still, the quality of the original was so great that the performance of the replica was significant. I watched Lee Jae-hi groaning as she grabbed the hammer that couldn't be moved. Isn't this an item that only someone special can use? Damn, I'm not special? At this time, Lee Gil-young came up behind her and reached out to Mjolnir. "Hey kid! This is mine." Mjolnir was lightly lifted by Lee Gil-young's hands. Lee Gil-young swung the hammer around before looking at me. "Hyung, can I have it?" "Yes, it looks good." Lee Jae-hi once again looked stunned. "Only I am unhappy, just me." I ignored her and searched the remaining items. Let's see what was left. External reinforced suit, replica, a grade protective clothing. I didn't know what would happen in the future, but it would be nice to supplement my defense. Once I wore the suit, it wrapped around my arms and legs. Damage from external attacks is reduced by 10%. The ability to detect enemies is improved. You can move more agilely than before. It was a bit frustrating, but it was still better than not wearing it. In particular, I thought about the fight waiting at the end of this. Now the preparations were finished. Since there were no significant changes in the dungeon, it was clear that Yoo Jong-hyuk was alive. If we moved quickly through the 6th floor, we might be able to meet on the 7th floor. In the worst-case scenario, if he was fighting the boss on the 8th floor, at least he was still alive. Now, let's go and get our damn regressor back.